How do you prove the true value of HR so that the business takes you seriously and even creates a Chief People Officer role for you? That's one of the most inspiring parts of today's conversation with my guest, Leah Carnegie, who is Chief People Officer at Lottoland. Leah shares how she made sure that HR wasn't just seen as a support function, but as a vital business partner, and how that shift helped her step into the Chief People Officer role. It's something that I know so many people in HR really struggle with and find frustrating, not feeling that HR is truly valued. So I really hope that you're going to take a lot from this episode and enjoy it. If we haven't met before, hello, I'm Faye Wallace, a career and executive coach who specialises in supporting HR and people professionals to thrive at work. And I'm also the host of this podcast, HR Coffee Time. It's brilliant to have you listening or watching today. And of course, if you're a regular listener to the show, it is wonderful to have you here again. This episode is part of a special series where I'm aiming to demystify the Chief People Officer role. Every Chief People Officer guest who comes on the show answers the same 9 questions that you, the HR Coffee Time listeners, helped shape. But as always, I make sure that I ask extra questions as well when I think that you'd like me to dig a bit deeper into something you might be really interested about. Leah is the 7th CPO to join me in the series, and just like the others, she brings something unique to the conversation. In particular, you're going to get to hear her take on what senior level HR job titles actually mean. So we look at VP, Director and CPO. You also find out about the moment she realised HR had to have a seat at the table at her company and how she and the founder of the business supported each other. He taught her the business while she helped him understand talent and people strategy. And another thing I think you might really enjoy hearing about is the mindset shift from doing to thinking that every aspiring Chief People Officer has to get to grips with. I first came across Leah when she posted about episode 148 of the podcast on LinkedIn, sharing her own reflections on what being a Chief People Officer really means. I loved the way she described it, and I loved the fact that she'd enjoyed the episode. That one was with Jane Beeston. I hope that you've enjoyed it too if you've listened to it. And so I decided to invite her on the show, and I was delighted when she said yes. I hope you're going to enjoy learning from Leah as much as I did. Let's go ahead and meet her now. Welcome to the show, Leah. It is so fantastic to have you here today.
Thank you, Faye. I'm excited and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're really welcome. I'm so excited too. It's brilliant to have someone who is a listener to the show in the first place and who has also very kindly shared the show on LinkedIn and talked about it and shared some of your insights. So I can't wait to have a deeper dive into even more of your Chief People Officer insights today.
It's interesting because I came across your show and I don't think there's many people that discuss the content that you do. So I thought it was good to share and have a bit more in-depth discussions on what it really means to be a CPO.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. And that's why I started this special series, really. There just didn't seem to be very much information out there at all. So here we are contributing to it. And I'll start us off with our very first question, which is, how did you get your first Chief People Officer role?
It was a natural evolution. I joined a company as VP of People, a gaming company, and it was a startup. It was 50 people. We built that into a global company. We moved from just being in Gibraltar to different various states and different countries. Now we're global. And with that, I requested a seat at the table because I wanted HR to be not just HR because we should have the business lens. And to have the business lens, we need to understand what the business is doing. And the best place for that is to be in the conversations. And my founder agreed and stepped into a CPO role.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. Very similar to Victoria Pounder, who was a guest on the show recently.
Yeah.
She was people director or HR director, and she put forward a case for the fact that she thought there should be a CPO in the business. So it would be great to hear from you then how you went about that. So you said you spoke to the founder about it. Are you happy to share a little bit more detail, just in case there's someone listening who would like to try doing the same thing?
I think it's understanding what we're bringing to the table and the impact of having the people's voice at the table, because we do a balance between the business and the people. And sometimes when you're at a business conversation, I think the last thing on people's mind is how's that going to impact the people, the business? Do we have the right people in the right places? Are we seeking the talent? Do we have the right skill set? In their heads, they're talking about revenue. They're talking about KPIs. They're talking about, cost per acquisitions. It's a completely different language to properly what we would bring to the table to say, okay, great, this is a great plan, but have we done the investigation? How do we step into a new country or a new product? And how can we help the business and protect it in some ways as well, and protect our talent and understand how we become an employer brand? And what does that mean? And intentionally setting, to start off with, we have to intentionally set some policies and some guardrails, as we call them, to grow your culture. And then as the time goes by, that becomes your natural DNA of the company.
So was it literally a case of you sat down and just had a chat with the founder about it, or was it a sort of gradual evolution, or how did it all happen?
I think it was a gradual evolution, but I think there was a time when we were entering a country and I was the last to hear about it. And we needed to go fast. We needed to understand how we hire people. And I had a discussion with them to say, we're going to be doing this on a numerous occasions. It'd be great if I'm involved in the conversations. It'd be great if I understood the business plan, and it'd be great that I am there to guide and advise and to listen to what the business needs so that you can bring to the table the business case. I started doing that, and from there it was a natural evolution into the Chief People Officer role.
Oh gosh, I can imagine so many people are nodding along or really feeling for you at that moment. It's so frustrating when you're the last person to hear about something really important, and you know that if you'd been involved from the very beginning, that everything would just be going so much more smoothly and that there wouldn't be as much feeling of stress that often happens if we're the last one to know.
Exactly. And understanding, the business as well, because that is one of the key elements of understanding the business, to understand what the people, to understand what we're trying to achieve as well, and how do we bring the people along on the journey. Because when you're from startup growing into more of an enterprise business, change management is something that we've got to consider all the time. So how do we communicate? What's the messages? What's the intentions? And because with change becomes fear, whether it's excitement or whether that's anxiety, it's a very thin line. So how do we help the business move forward with that as well?
So it's really interesting to hear. So it sounds like this instant happened where you were the last to find out that the organisation was moving into a new location. So you said, look, could I please be involved in all these senior level meetings? I think it's really important. And these are the reasons why. You started being involved in those meetings.
Yes.
So at what point was it that your job title changed, that you were able to say, whether the founder said, let's call you Chief People Officer now, or whether you said, look, actually, I'm now doing this job, can I please have the title? Like, how did it actually work?
It actually worked when I was attending the meetings, listening, understanding, and I ended up having to take on another department. And from there, it was like, come knocking on the door to say, now you need a Chief People Officer, because if your Chief People Officer is coming to save another department, then we could have planned this if we knew. So let's work together and I will become your advisor. And the guide is that he would teach me the business and I would help him with the understanding of how we can better explore our talent and match our people to the company's needs.
And that's the founder that you're talking about there.
Yes.
So do the two of you work quite tightly together, or are there other people
There's
involved in
others.
this?
There's others now. We have various CEOs now. Same thing. Same on the same guidelines. We work together. Because we have different businesses. You teach me the business, or they give me the understanding of the business. I'll ask questions. I'll get to learn, and then on the guide of that, then I can help, and my team can help support with how we can get the business to where they want it to be, with the right people at the right time and the right skill sets.
Oh, that's a really interesting structure. So it sounds like there's you and the founder, and then there's a collection of CEOs, like one CEO per entity.
Per brand, yes.
And how many brands are there?
I think altogether we've got 4 altogether. So we've got 4 CEOs, but I predominantly work with the global CEO and COO now rather than the founder.
Ah, I see. Oh, it's just fascinating to hear. So many different organizations have got different structures. And I think that's one thing that's starting to hopefully come through in this series, that there isn't any one perfect structure.
No.
It really is going to depend on the organization that you're working in.
Yep. And I think we started work with the founder because it was a startup. Now it's 10 years. I've been in the company 10 years. Now I work with the chief executive team. We work together as one team. We've been doing that for a while. But as it started with the founder and some of our CEOs and CEOs. And then we've created a chief executive officer team, which now we work together to help guide the company.
Well, thank you so much for talking us through that. I hope you don't mind that.
That's
I've
all
been
right.
quizzing you loads.
Yeah, no. It's the evolution of a company growing, and how your reporting lines change, people change, your seniors, your peers change. I think it's, moving from startup to enterprise is not everyone's cup of tea. Some people like the fun of the startup, and then when you come into more enterprise, there's more constraints, there's more governance. Some people prefer the creative side. So you do go through a number of team members, and you do go through different stages of how you work with the business and what the business requires back of you. So there is this evolution in yourself and the people you work with and the business.
And thinking of the next question I'm going to ask you from my list of 9 questions that I ask all the chief people officers who come on the show. Before I launch into the question, I need to check with you. So what was your job title before you became chief people officer?
VP of people.
Ah, yes. Now, VP, in my opinion, or in my experience, in the UK, it's not a hugely dominant term. But of course, you're in Gibraltar, aren't you? Yes. I normally actually think of VP as being used more in US-based businesses, maybe. And so I know, in fact, I was even Googling this quite recently, like, what is the equivalent? I think I asked ChatGPT, what is the equivalent of VP? And ChatGPT said to me, oh, well, it can be different depending on the organization, but it's often the equivalent of either head of people or people director. But you may disagree with me because you were doing the job.
No, I think it would be equivalent to director, because I came from, before I moved to this company, I was in a banking company, and they used the American terminology of VPs. But when we came back, when you look at it, I think more Europeans use VPs and directors, and in the UK it's directors. So I would say it's on the same lines as a director, because you do become a director at the same time of your certain entities.
So when you were VP, you were actually officially a director of the business or businesses?
Yes, yeah.
And again, for anyone listening thinking, okay, you're now totally losing me, Faye, in the minefield that is job titles within the realm of HR. So when we say you officially become a director, are you happy, Leah, just to explain for anyone who might not be familiar with what that means?
A director means that you actually are registered as a director onto a company officially, and you have a public liability with that responsibility.
Yes, partly why the whole governance thing becomes so important as you become more senior as well, because you can be held accountable and responsible for things that go wrong within the organisation once you're actually officially registered as director.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I feel like this is now turning into an explanation of job titles and what they all mean, but
it can be. It's a minefield.
Yes, I'm hoping it's going to be useful, because I often have people saying, oh my gosh, it just doesn't make any sense. There are so many different titles. What do they all mean?
Yes.
So, having known you were a VP, which is the equivalent to people director or HR director, the second question is, what has been the biggest difference between having that former title of being a VP and now being a chief people officer?
I think being the VP, the difference is the vision and the strategy of where you want the company to go along with the business. I think at the VP, you're at more of the execution part. And I still believe you do both in depending on your company. But I think the difference between the VP is you need to understand the business. You need to understand what the vision is. You need to understand what our customers are wanting. We need to understand how do we play that back into the workplace, and what do our people need to do, and what do we want them to do, and what do we want to achieve as a company, and legacy we want to, and brands that we want to create. And from there, you then build your people vision and people strategy around that. And then you pass that to the teams, to your line managers, to your exec teams, to start working on tactical plans to embed that. And I think the other piece is looking at how systems are operated within the company, like your reward strategies, your performance, and making sure that there are systems available for, and looking at the systems rather than just looking at them as a product level.
So that really chimes with what lots of the other chief people officers have been saying as well. To me, it really feels like what you're all saying is there's this broadening out, I think,
Yes.
of your knowledge and understanding when it comes to business. Whereas up until that point, often I guess the expertise is very much within the
Correct.
HR sphere
Yes.
of influence. It's more HR specific.
Yeah.
And I can imagine how daunting that can feel, like, oh my gosh, now I've suddenly got to develop this deep business expertise. So
Yeah.
it would be really helpful to hear from you how you went about doing that.
Asking for help. Asking line managers for help, asking people for help, getting involved in projects, being nosy, being curious, always having the curiosity, building connections in different teams. And I think one of the key elements when the light bulb switched on for me was Lucy Adams released a book called the HR Toolkit. And I always had in my head, and if I ever wrote a book, it'd be like that, because she articulated so well, is that our departments and our skill set is a business entity within a business entity. So when we talk about the business, we need to talk to our line managers or our hiring managers or our seniors as if we're part of the business. So whenever I say we're working with the acquisition team, it's a similar funnel and a similar process to the marketing acquisition team. So we try to explain that and understand it, so we talk on their terms, and then our teams can understand that actually we're no different from the marketing acquisition team. It's just that we're dealing with the different products. And we're, instead of creating customers, we're creating funnels for our talent. So getting to the grips of that, understanding that we're product managers, understanding that we're finance managers, understanding that we're legal, understanding that now we're becoming technology in the AI automation world. So that we wear a lot of hats, but I think we do ourselves injustice because we can't seem to articulate our return on investment as well as other business entities. But we are no different. And actually, we are the internal business entity for our internal customers.
Well, I feel like Lucy Adams must have her ears burning at the moment, because her other book has been recommended on the show before. I'm trying to think who recommended it. Oh, it was Victoria Pounder recommended it, and I'm sure it has been recommended way back as well. That one is called HR Disrupted, but the one that you've just mentioned, I have just very quickly looked it up, is actually the HR Change Toolkit.
Yes.
And despite the fact that my reading pile is actually out of control, Leah, I am going to order that immediately after we've had this interview, because it sounds fantastic and it is so helpful for everyone listening to get great recommendations for any sorts of resources that can help them with their career within HR, whether that is a book or other podcasts or courses. So a big thank you for mentioning that already.
Pleasure. And if anyone ever wanted to do, we actually followed Lucy Adams a lot in Disruptive HR, and majority of my team have gone through her Disruptive HR partner workshops because they think differently, and it has disrupted the thought process.
Ooh, wow.
Which is good.
For everyone listening or watching, if you're watching us on YouTube, I will make sure that I put links, not just to the book, but I will also put links to Lucy's other resources in there as well, including the HR business partner stuff that Leah's recommending. I think there's actually an HR business partner course. And I know she also has got a community as well. So
yes, that's
I'll
right.
pop all of that in there so everyone can look at it. And it's fabulous to have another recommendation. So I'll move us along, though, to question 3, which is, once you'd actually started your first Chief People Officer role, how was it different to what you'd expected?
I think it was different as in you owned more budgets. You became a business manager. So you became your finance, you became your legal, and you needed to understand how you were operating your unit or business unit as a functioning business that is producing a return of investment to the company. So what we do, what's our impact, why are we doing things, and understanding that, and that accountability lies with you. So there's no getting away from it. And I think sometimes that deep breath of realizing that there is no one behind you. You are the person that people are going to for the advice, for guidance. And sometimes you have to say, I don't know, because you don't know everything. And I think that was the most uncomfortable thing I had to get used to, is not knowing everything and going to seek advice and come back. And some advice where I've seen I could have got better, and some advice I was like, wow, that really worked. How do we do that again? So I think that is the biggest thing, is you are a business manager.
So when you're seeking out that advice, is that advice you're looking for internally from your colleagues, or is it advice you're going to obtain outside of the organisation?
It's both. And it's also just keep learning, because it's a minefield that HR has become over the last years, and it's changing a lot. The companies are changing a lot. The expectations of our people are changing. So we have to keep learning, and we have to keep looking out there, and how are we going to be the best workplace, to be a better environment for everyone. So it's seeking people's advice internally, externally, and doing your own research.
And how are you going about doing all of that? How are you making sure that you are up to date and you're not getting left behind when it comes to your knowledge?
I do courses upon courses. I think I'm addicted to some of that.
I'm addicted to doing courses too. Don't worry, we're the same.
Courses, creating communities. So I make sure that we've also got like-minded people to have discussions, because I think that's the best way we can learn, on people's experiences, thought process. Difference of opinion is great, because you're thinking, oh wow, I didn't think about it that way. And I think that is making sure that we're always keeping our minds open. I think once we close our minds and we think that we know it all, I think that's the time we're in trouble.
And one of the things that you mentioned sort of leapt out at me, which was about the creating your own community. That has been mentioned before. And that is also something that I know people can really struggle with, the idea that we create a community. So it'd be great just to ask you a little bit more about that. So for your community, is that comprised of other HR professionals, or is that something else? And how did you go about building it?
So we do both. So I'm the chairperson of the CIPD in Gibraltar. So we create a community through that. But I also create a community of like-minded people managers. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in HR, because I think not everyone in HR has the hat of HR. Some people have HR finance, HR office. We tend to have the HR connected on top. And I think it's making sure that we reach out there. So I do some talks. We do open cafes to say, come and have a talk. I'm sitting here if you want a coffee. I haven't done it so much on Zoom or digital yet, but because face-to-face always seems a little bit better sometimes. And it's also to be vulnerable, to say that not everything's perfect and not everything we do is right, even though the amount of experience we have. Sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we have good days. And it's sharing that vulnerability so that people can connect to a level, I think.
So that you've got the CIPD, which is
Mm-hmm.
obviously external to your organisation. And
Yep.
then when you were talking about doing things like the cafe, that feels more like you're creating a sense of community and bringing a presence within the organisation.
No, I do it for the community outside as well.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
So it's the external community as
Yes.
well.
Also, yes. Yeah. So there's
how-
quite few of us, because when I moved to Gibraltar, there wasn't many of us with a CIPD qualification. So we created a small community. We brought the CIPD over, and then from there we've made sure that raising the platform of HR professionals here, we took it upon ourselves. There's a group of us that we will be there to support, be offering any questions, any answers, giving guidance, being a shoulder to cry, because it's a lonely place sometimes. And I think people stepping into HR sometimes don't recognize that can be a lonely place. And I think not all of us reach out for that support. So it's offering it.
Oh, what a wonderful thing to be doing. I hadn't realised, so I'm really pleased I asked you a bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good for everyone. It's good for everyone just to have some friends out there.
You've already touched on lots of things that are helping you to succeed as a chief people officer, but it would be great to dive into this in even more detail. And that means I'm going to ask you the next question, which is what skills, habits, or practices have most helped you succeed as a chief people officer?
I think I've done coaching, mediation, NLP, and I've done my CIPD exams. I've done business and finance. And I think the biggest thing is the psychological safety and learn. When I did my coaching, I thought I listened until I did the coaching and realized that I was listening to reply. I was probably level 2 listening, because even though I wanted to keep a space, I always had in my head, I've got a next meeting, I've got this, I've got your to-do list is coming through. And I think to hold a space intentionally for people to feel heard has been the most important skill I've developed. And it's not perfect because of just life, but we do have to take a breath some days and think we need to check in on people, making sure they're okay, understanding what happened, what was good, what can we improve on, and actually listening. And I think also following up and keeping the communication dialogues open and not being scared of feedback. I actually go out. I think the last 360s I did was 23. The people, the one before that was 70. It's seek feedback because you do not understand your impact. And it's always good to understand impact. And I think that's what I learned from the coaching element and the mediation is what is the impact that you're trying to create.
Oh my goodness, so much I want to say. Now you've kindly shared that. The coaching skills again have come up before as well. And I have got a couple of episodes that specifically look at coaching skills for anyone listening or watching who would like to dive even more into that topic. Make sure you watch or listen all the way to the end, and I will share the episode numbers. I can never remember them off the top of my head, which is how come you get to hear them at the very end. We also have an episode about mediation where Pete Colby, who is a mediation trainer, he has a company called Pragmatism. He came on the show to talk about mediation skills, how they can be helpful for your HR career, how to develop them. So I'll make sure that I link to that as well. And feedback. It is so great to hear you talking about feedback, especially talking about 360-degree feedback, because you're right. I think so many people are fearful of feedback. And I know I have been in the past as well. It's something I really had to work on and realize it's a good thing. It really helps you to improve and keep making sure that you're doing the absolute best and you keep growing and developing, because often we don't realize the impact that we're having or not having. Is there a particular tool that you'd recommend that you used for securing that 360 feedback?
No, I've used different. I've used my own. I used a third-party company. We've used just putting questions on forms. I don't think it needs to be complicated. I think It can be as simple as, what do I need to start? What do I need to stop? What do I need to continue? But what is important is the examples, because when we are giving feedback and we don't give them examples, it's really hard to create a reality on how you can change your behavior otherwise. And the other thing I have done is reverse mentoring. And I still do that to the day. And that has been impactful also, because once you listen to the feedback and you think you have this amazing idea in your head and it's going to create this impact, and then all of a sudden you go and no, that's not what happened. And it's, oh my goodness. Okay, let's rewind and understand, where did we lose the impact? What could we have done better? How can we re-embed? And I think that's important, because we deal with so many different people, different personalities. We need to understand how we can be self-aware and how we can maybe come into check when we're dealing with individuals.
Gosh, I'm being so bad at asking you millions of extra questions today. I really hope you don't mind. Sorry, you're being far too interesting that there are all these millions of spin-offs. I'm going to try and be good now and stick to the main ones. So the next question I have for you is, what is the biggest challenge you've experienced as a Chief People Officer?
I had to think really hard on this one, because is it not knowing the business? Is it knowing that you've got blind spots? Is it knowing that you've got vulnerabilities? And I think the answer that I came to was the emotional weight that you carry, and sometimes the loneliness that it can be, because you're in between. Sometimes you've got to know your voice, and you've got a challenge where maybe you're the only one challenging, because people aren't seeing it. It's their blind spot. Maybe the company doesn't want to take the particular issue you've raised, and maybe you've got to keep going, keep understanding it. But it's the emotional weight of knowing when to do the right thing and knowing when to stand your ground, and knowing when you've got to hold space for people and their emotions, and then understanding your emotions from it, because people think you sometimes don't have emotions as people officer, and getting to understand that and having that balance and being vulnerable to say, I'm not doing okay today, this is impact, or I've been really thinking about this, maybe too deeply. Can you give me some balance? So having people to spar off and to challenge your thought process is always been a good thing. But the emotional weight is one thing that I wasn't expecting as much.
You're not going to be surprised to hear you're not the first person to have talked about that on the show. I think it is really easy often for other people in the organization to underestimate just how impactful that can be. And it makes me think I'm going to skip ahead to one of my other questions, actually, which will link in with this, which is, how do you maintain your mental well-being in such a high priority and demanding role? And I guess when I say demanding there, I mean from that emotional weight perspective as well.
It's something I've had to learn, because it was probably always deemed as a weakness if you can't hold it all, and it was a reward. You come in thinking, I've been so busy, and someone says, I've been so busy, I haven't slept tonight, and someone says, I haven't slept for 2 nights, and it's like this cycle of what we deem is important. So I think it's something I've learned on the journey, because I think it's the right thing to look after your mental health and your well-being for the people around you. I think it's the analogy, you need to put your oxygen mask on first. So how I do that, I journal. I do go through my day and think what's been in my control, what hasn't been in my control, and maybe what could I have done differently in the day, or what worked well, and maybe do it again, because I think we don't reflect enough. And I do give myself think time. I do go for walk and talks. I do get out to the office. People probably don't actually see me in my office. I don't have a dedicated desk. I float around, and it's the same thing as exercising and managing stress. And I think it's also allowing people to tell you, you're coming across as stressed. Are you okay? Maybe it's time to take a couple of days off, and allowing people to give you that nudge, because sometimes you think you've got to carry it all the way through. And sometimes that's not always necessary. You can pass the baton on and take that break, because that's for the best of the company, your families, the people you work with, and yourself.
And you said that's something you've had to learn and work on. How have you gone about doing that? How has that happened that you've been able to get to a point where you can prioritize your mental health and that you are able to encourage feedback from other people saying to you, oh, I'm a bit worried, you seem a bit stressed, or maybe you need a bit of a break. How has that happened?
Being vulnerable, opening up that door to say you're human, we're all human. Having a coach. Sometimes I've had numerous coaches to understand our trigger points, to understand how I carry stress, because I think not lots of us understand how we carry stress in our body, and understanding that it's okay that we can take time off. We're not robots, and it's giving ourselves that permission. And I suppose the maturity of saying, I need time to think, because as more senior you become, it's coming out of the doing, and you get stressed about coming out of the doing because that is your achievement. And then your achievement as a CPO is completely different, because you're sitting there going, well, I need to think about this, but you don't think that thinking is an achievement. So it's changing the way of working. And I think that's just been open with my team. They're open with me, open with your coach, and open with your reports and your manager also. So you create a space for that conversation.
It's really interesting because I think I've said it's really interesting, Leah, about, I don't know, 1,000,000 times so far, because everything you have shared is so interesting. But as you were talking, it made me really think about the phrase psychological safety. And I think the more that you're sharing examples with us, the more it's really coming to life that this is something you hugely prioritize in all sorts of ways. And I know that lots of people listening will be really familiar with the term psychological safety, but just for people who aren't, because I'm really conscious of the fact that in the world of HR, we can be very guilty of having all of these words that not everyone knows what they are. So psychological safety, the concept, I think it was coined by, I'm going to get her surname wrong. I know it starts with Amy. Does it end in Edmondson, or have I just made that up?
Edmondson.
I think so. And she talked about the fact that actually psychological safety makes such a difference to teams and organizations. And it is when people feel that they can speak up and they can disagree and they can say things and know that it's going to be okay, that they're not going to be shot down or told off or shut down or penalized in some way for having done that. Correct. So hopefully that just helps clarify in case anyone's listening and thinking, ooh, this term's really interesting. So I'm hoping that hearing that definition will also shine a light on the fact that you really are doing this within your organization and within your team. You can really see the value of it.
I think so. I think it's one of the key things that I think we all need to do, because we never know what everyone's carrying. So we really do need to understand that we're all coming to work to do the best we can. I don't believe people wake up and think, I'm going to do the worst I can today. Things happen and life happens. And I think we all have to appreciate that and create a space where it's okay to say, today's a really good day, I've been excited, or today didn't land so well, or having these honest and real conversations, because we're all coming to work. We might have different titles. It doesn't mean that it stops us from having life. And it doesn't stop us from having experiences. We just come with different experiences, and we can come with different opinions and maybe guidance. And I think that's what we've got to, or that's how I think we need to work more on the lines of, is that, and that's what putting the H back into human, right? Whenever someone says, and I always say it, that we talk B2C and B2G, business to consumer, business to government, business to business. I think we as a people team need to do H to H, which is human to human. And I think that's one of the key elements of that.
Such an inspiring message to hear. I can just imagine people listening feeling fired up to go and make changes within their organisation. You're getting me all fired up, Leah. It's brilliant. So the next question I have for you is, what advice do you have for anyone listening or watching? I have to get used to saying watching. Now it's on YouTube as well. Who would like to be a chief people officer one day?
I would say, don't get caught up in certificates. Don't get caught up in the thought process that you have to do it in A, B, C, and D. Go out there, experience as much of the business world as you can, get involved in as many projects that are non-HR as you can, interview people like project managers. How do they run a project? Procurement. How do you manage a budget? How do you understand? How do you negotiate? Product owners. What do you do? How do you have that conversation and scope from one project to the next? Marketeers, because that's what we are when we're in recruiting. We're marketeers. Interview and just explore and be curious and ask lots of questions and never get defensive. Just open the door to that. There is so much learning, and allow people to help, because if you ask people for their support and help, they are always open to sharing their knowledge. I haven't had one person that's said no, go away.
It can feel really daunting asking people, can't it? But
It can.
You're right. I think that people generally, most of humankind, love to be asked for help.
It's part
tend
of
to
a community.
enjoy helping.
Yeah, it's part of a community build, and you learn skills and you learn experiences, and you can understand, okay, that's why that happens. Right, I understand that. And a number of times, if you're in a startup community, go and talk to HR people or other people in a more grown-up community that are enterprise, because how do you move from this business to how do you grow that business with the governance and the compliance, because that is there and that has to happen. It sounds boring, but it has to happen on top of the experience. And I think the other one that I've worked on recently is learning to become a design thinker, understanding that we're designing an experience and how do we start that. And a lot of that starts by collecting data.
Oh, the design thinking. Now, this is going to push completely against what you've just advised, which is just, ask everybody for help. But when it comes to design thinking, have you done a course or read a book or anything, or is all of that information you've gleaned from other people?
Some of it is I gleaned from sitting with UX or UI within the teams. A lot of it got triggered by the Lucy Adam thing as well, because it's a design thinking. Design thinking also starts off with go get curious. Go and understand what people want, what people need. Because as a people team, sometimes we think we know the answers, but we haven't got the data behind it. And then you build on your empathy mapping. And there's IDEO. I can send you the link. There's IDEO and there's Hyper Island that do some really good small courses on design thinking. But a lot of it is, if you go into a community as well of LinkedIn and you can say, can anyone share what an empathy map is? Loads of people would be there to share their knowledge with you, because people want to design better places.
Yeah, it's so great to have those recommendations. When you were talking, I was immediately thinking of IDEO and Hyper Island as well. I have seen some of their resources and they're both excellent. And if people are listening to this and they are podcast listeners, IDEO has got a podcast as well. So I will make sure that I put links to all of the fabulous things that you have been recommending, Leah, in the show notes for everyone who's listening or watching. And if you're thinking, where are these show notes? If you just tap on the episode, if you're listening to it in a podcast app, you should then be able to see a whole load of writing underneath the main parts of the podcast cover art, and all of that writing is the show notes. Or if you're watching on YouTube, I'll pop it all in the description beneath the video for you. So moving us along, we are getting near the end now. The next question is, what is the one piece of advice you would give to anyone who is about to start their first Chief People Officer role and is nervous about it?
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Have a coach or someone external that you can talk to, because every day is going to be different. You might want to talk to someone and create a 90-day plan. And with that, what I mean by 90-day plan is go and talk to the business. Go and see what really is. Go and look at the data. Go and look at your customer impulse. Go and look at complaints. because it shows the culture of the company, of what is coming through. Because if there's complaints for the customer that keep coming up, then there's something that within the framework or within the departments that maybe not be working as well, or maybe the teams are not engaged, or they're they're under-resourced, or they're not trained. So go and have a look at all the data and see what that looks like, and explore and spend time understanding what's already there. Because I think a number of times we've had new people start in the people team, and it's like restart instead of understanding what's there and what can be built upon.
Such great advice. And I feel a bit sad now that I'm on the very final question. I mean, you'll probably be massively relieved, Leah, that that the grilling will stop. But I feel disappointed. I'm going to have to say goodbye. So the very final question, oh gosh, you've actually referenced so many today, but I wonder if there's even more. The very final question is, are there any courses or qualifications you've taken that were particularly useful for succeeding as a Chief People Officer?
I don't think there was any particular courses other than what I've said, because change management. I've done change management, communication, internal communication, understanding how important that is. I think for me, it's not about the courses, it's about linking in with who are your key stakeholders and really understanding them. And I think that's one of your biggest learnings, because from there you will pick up, we work with finance. So how do we read a balance sheet? How do we read a P&L? How do we know the health of the company? With the legal team, how do they work? How do they support you? And from there you will start learning and picking up small things that you can learn and educate yourself along the way.
Well, such brilliant advice to end on. All that leaves me to say is a huge thank you for your time today. It has been amazing having you on HR Coffee Time.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's actually been fun, including I was a bit scared to start with.
I don't know whether to be worried that you said actually or not, but I'm really pleased. It's been fun. It's been absolutely wonderful for me too. Thank you so much, Leah. I'd love to know what was most helpful or interesting from hearing Leah's experience and advice. It's always wonderful to hear from you and to get your feedback. Talking of feedback, is that something that came up in the episode? You can let me know in the YouTube comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or send me a message on LinkedIn, or if you're feeling really generous, you could even post about the episode on LinkedIn and tag me in. That would be amazing. As promised, I'll pop links to all of the resources Leah mentioned into the show notes for you, and I'll also put them in the YouTube description as well. So that includes things like Lucy Adams' books, the IDEO podcast, is that how you pronounce it? IDEO, and the Hyper Island website. I also said I'd share some other HR Coffee Time episodes that you might find useful if you'd like to dive deeper into some of the themes we touched on today. So those episodes are episode 78, 5 tips to get useful feedback at work to help your HR or people career. Episode 99, how mediation skills can help you resolve conflict at work with Pete Colby. Episode 53, why coaching skills can help your HR career and how to develop them with Charlie Wachowski. And finally, episode 130, build managers' confidence and skills with the coaching 2-step with Jude Sclater. If you enjoyed this episode, please do consider rating and reviewing it in your podcast app or on YouTube, or share it with a friend or a colleague in HR. It takes ages to make these episodes, so it means a huge amount to see it being listened to or being watched, and know that it is hopefully having an impact and helping people to really have HR careers that they can thrive in and that they're happy in. Thank you so much, and I am looking forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time with the next episode for you.